Welcome to VoiceOver, Movies That Move Us. I'm your host, Heather Bigley, and I talk to people about the movies that made a mark, that led to cinematic epiphanies, and it's not always the movie you'd expect. Today's movie is a recent documentary, Bye Bye Tiberias, released in 2024. This film was directed by Lina Soualem, whose mother is the Palestinian actress Hiam Abbas. In the film, Lina and Hiam return to Hiam's childhood home by the Sea of Galilee, known locally as Tiberias, to reconnect with the family she left behind to become an actress in Europe. The film captures the relationship between Hiam and her family, as well as her great-grandparents' displacement in the 1948 Arab-Israeli War and how that trauma impacted the family. My guest today is Marie-Laure Oscarson, the assistant director and curator for BYU's International Cinema, a university cinematheque that programs about 90 films per year for the BYU community. As always, we'll be talking about the entire film from start to finish, so if spoilers are something that annoy you, know that's in your future. This movie touched you because of its portrait of female relationships and family coming together across all these borders. If you were to recommend this to someone, what would you say to them?
First of all, that documentaries need to be discovered by more people, and that cinema is such an empathy tool, and documentaries are at the heart of that. Discovering a place I've never been to, a people I've never really encountered on their own land or in their own places of exile in that documentary, and really immersing ourselves, as the image that Lina is giving us at the beginning, in another story and being there with them and holding place for them. I think for me that's the work of every human, to have more compassion for each other. So yes, you might not be taken away from your own life. It might actually bring you right back to your own life. But maybe look for how it changes you and what it inspires you to do. Like, for instance, you were talking about your own mother, and maybe you want to make some changes. And I think that's it. That's what cinema can do, and documentaries, especially good documentaries like this one. So let your human heart be swelled by these stories and keep that feeling inside. And when the news are gloom and terrible, feel for that people, because you've been a little bit in their home with them. Yeah. And you've heard them speak their own language, and you've seen the landscape that they're looking at. You've maybe understood something about the loss that they're experiencing and the fear as well of losing even more. And if your heart is touched, then I would say that documentary is completely successful in its aim to share and to change people.
Yeah.
And in that case, like at the family level, to build something, Lina is really building something. Those portraits in exile, they're very precious.
You were in a discussion with Lina Soualem.
Post-screening discussion,
Yeah,
yes.
Tell me about that.
So the film screened at Palm Springs International Film Festival in 2023, and she was there and talked about her documentary and why she made it, and it was great. It was great to meet her.
Yeah.
Like the warmth you feel in the documentary, that's her.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's a great experience.
Oh, and then you discover aspects that as a viewer you were like, oh, I did not think about this, or I did not know that. It's very enriching for sure.
Yeah. There are a couple questions that, as just a film person, I wanted to jump in on. And one is, and it might seem trivial to people, but how much does screen size matter? I saw this on my laptop, and I love going to a theater. I love seeing a big screen. I love being in an audience with people because that really impacts how you react to a film. And I know that Hollywood has its moments when it's like, we're going to release this on the biggest screen ever. But I also know that people have experiences watching movies on a plane on that tiny little screen. So do you think this matters, screen size or where you see a film, or does that matter to you?
In this age of isolation through social media, absolutely. Going to the movie theater with your friends, with your loved ones, or even people you don't know very well, or your classmates, it opens up, first of all, a community. You feel together, you react together, and it's good for your soul to be together feeling something. And as well, if you're there with friends, you can engage in a conversation. And I think films are meant to engage the viewer, and for the viewer to engage with the world and the topic and the world of ideas and the world of compassion. It's a compassion machine. And so, yes, watching on our own, on small screens, I would say no. Only if it's the last resort that you have.
I had a friend who once asked me to recommend some films, and I did. Some of them were international films, and they had subtitles. And I asked him later, oh, did you see this movie? And he said, yeah, I saw it on my bike, on my phone. I was biking. And I was just like, you watched it on, Oh, the youth today. That's all I have to say. Like, you have capabilities I don't have. Okay, so the other question I had is about celebrity, because I didn't recognize the name Hiam Abbas, who is sort of the main character. And then when she came on screen, I was like, oh, this is the woman from Satin Rouge and The Lemon Tree. And I'd also seen her in Paradise Now. Right. And she has an extensive catalog well beyond those three films. Yes. But I was just like, oh, so this is an incredibly famous woman, grew up in Palestine and has been in Middle Eastern and Mediterranean film, but is also well known in North Africa, is a French citizen. Like, here's a person who I think as an audience, we see her and we are immediately engaged because of her celebrity. In your capacity in all the films you've seen, do you think it matters that we have that celebrity to engage an audience?
I think Lina Soualem's topic is urgent. Mm-hmm. It's so important to so many people. If you have a mom who is a celebrity, why not? And because this mom has cut herself away from her culture, her country, and this is the topic, this fragmented personal stories of a family and of a people. So yes, I'm sure it could increase the reach and the visibility. There is a potential for more funding and support. Maybe there is an access as well for a wider audience, because people who like Hiam Abbas will be interested in her more personal story. Yeah. Another documentary that came to my mind is The Disappearance of My Mother.
Oh, I don't know this.
It's an Italian documentary. And the son is the filmmaker. The mother is a very famous model. And she did not want to be the topic of that documentary. So the whole time there's a little bit of discomfort. Yeah. I think that with Lina Soualem and her mother, it's a different thing. It's not just about who she is as an actress. It goes way beyond in her personal identity and the weight of her history and the stories of being displaced and in exile, not only because she chose to leave her culture, but as well because her mother, and this documentary looks at like generational histories that go past that.
Well, and in fact, the film, if you don't know anything about the films that she's been in, we don't hear anything about the film she's been in.
Absolutely. It's not the topic, right?
Yeah, I went to be an actress, and here are the times that I've come back. I brought you, my daughter, with me. And there's a actually really poignant question. Should I have brought you here? Which I just think is a fascinating question. I myself don't have children, but the idea that I wouldn't take my children back to the place where I had grown up. I mean, what did you think of that question?
Well, geography is so important in this film. And the film starts with placing us at the heart of this geography and all the borders that surround the village where Hiam Abbas grew up. And
she grew up at the Sea of Galilee, we're told.
Right.
And it's referred to as Tiberias and
exactly.
by those people.
And that's the name, Lake Tiberias as well. And so there's the Syrian-Lebanon border, the Palestinian-Jordanian border. It's all about borders.
Yeah, and there's a line, that's where Jordan is, this is where Syria is, and they do it several times. They point out to you, like, you can see these countries from where I stand.
هناك البحر، هناك لبنان، هناك سوريا، وهناك الأردن، وإحنا هينا بالنص.
And you see fences and you see mountains and you really feel like the borders are real. They're real borders. And Lina starts by saying that, and with as well home videos, footage, and it's her and her mom. She's little and they're in the lake, the Sea of Galilee or the Lake Tiberias. And that she talks about her mother's desire to immerse her in her culture, in where she's from. And there's that symbolism with the water.
Toute mon enfance, ma mère m'a emmenée me baigner dans ce lac. Comme si elle voulait me plonger dans son histoire.
I thought it was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And so bringing back this little girl to where Hiam grew up and left, it's essential. They don't go into all the details in that documentary, but she left. And there was like a break with the family, not only culture and everything, but relationships and connections. And she mentioned that having Lina and bringing back this adorable baby melted all the hearts, and forgiveness was able to happen.
Yeah.
So I think that for him and for Lina and for the women of that family, it was essential that baby was with them every summer.
Well, the way the information is released in the film, I don't think we understand how severe the break was almost till halfway through the film when she says, here are the letters I wrote to my mother to tell her why I was never coming back.
مش بالضبط، عشان هيك بدور بفكر قلت لهن إنه أنا مخنوقة مش قادرة أعيش هون، إنه أنا بحاجة لنفس جديد، بحاجة لهوا جديد، بحاجة ألاقي نفسي.
And I was actually shocked. In my own personal experience, I joined the Church of Jesus Christ when I was 14 years old. And when I left for college, I came here to BYU. And I didn't expect to see my family again because they were very upset that I had joined the church. It had been a difficult 4 or 5 years at home. And I just thought, well, that's it. You know, they don't want to see me again. They don't like what I've done. I'm never going to go back. And then as I matured, I had this experience of, actually, I should go back. So I identified a little bit with that. You know, I wasn't leaving a country, but I very much identified with this sense of, I've made a choice. Mm-hmm. It's my choice. I own it. And it'll be painful, but it's probably for the best. And then rethinking that a little bit. Now, you said earlier that you feel like, in some ways, your experience of being between cultures, you saw mirrored up on the screen.
I'm from France, and a little bit like you, I found the church when I was 20, and then went on a mission in England, and then came to BYU. So all of a sudden, I was not living in France anymore. I had left my family. I chose another religion. I was brought up a Catholic, which was really hard for my family. And as well, very foreign. They were really worried about me. So that resonated with me. It's hard for me because this documentary, at the heart of it, is exile, displacement. It's not my experience. I chose to come to the US. Right. I cannot compare my experience to what the documentary is portraying. But I can understand the divide. And for me, the divide was very much cultural and, of course, religious, even though, as I said, my family is still very welcoming of me and loving and never rejected me.
So this film, we're in the present, we're in 2020 or 2022 or so. We get these flashbacks to the 90s, and then we go even further back to, there's all this footage from 1948. And if the audience doesn't know, 1948 is when Israel declared its independence from the Palestinian Mandate, which was set up by the British and the League of Nations. And then we have the Arab-Israeli War, where 5 nations invade the Palestinian territories. 700,000 Palestinians are uprooted and are pushed away from their land. And that's the story of this family. And it's heartbreaking to even comprehend. The grandparents of Hiam are pushed off their land. There's a really sad story of her grandparents trying to get back to their town, and then the grandfather losing his mind. He's so identified with the land and the territory that to not be able to access it is going to thrust him into great grief.
And he dies.
Yeah, and he dies
because of it, yes.
Yeah, we get snippets of the family trying to establish themselves somewhere else so that they can have some kind of stability.
Pour le reste, elle doit attendre, espérer et se construire une autre vie.
I want to name these women.
Yeah.
So there's Lina Soualem, the filmmaker. We've talked about her. Her famous mother, Hiam Abbas. And her mother is Nemat. And the grandmother or the great-grandmother. And so Umali and her husband, Ozni, are the ones that were displaced about 30 kilometers from where their lands and homes stand. But that really shattered the family. 10 children. One of the daughters is separated from them. She's going to spend years in refugee camps, separated from the family, with no news from them, no contact. At some point, she's going to be, I think 30 years after that, she's going to be able to come back and see her family secretly.
One of the most touching scenes for me is when Hiam actually goes to Syria and sees her aunt. And she describes it, about how her aunt kisses her all over.
Very touching.
And gives her a kiss for each family member.
And there's so many scenes like this in this film that are just heartbreaking and connecting and touching. And I really feel like the documentary is doing that. Telling the stories, fragmented stories of a people in exile, displaced, and trying to make sense of it. And as well trying to build connections and community. And this aunt, and I hope I say her name right, Hosnier. So Hiam is able to go see her because she has a French passport.
Yeah.
With her Palestinian passport, I mean, she's Israeli. She would have not been able to. And when they see each other in the street and Hosnier realizes her niece, she hugs her and breathes her, saying, she's bringing the smells of my people. She's bringing the smells of my village.
Yeah.
يعني قاعدة تتشمشم فيي وتقول لي حبيبتي خليني أشم ريحة أمي، ريحة ستي، ريحة أبوي، ريحة أخوي، روحي حبيبتي وتعد بكل العيلة وبكل بوسي وبكل لمسة بجسمي أحس إنها بتحكي عن حدا وبدهاش تتركني وأنا بدهاش أتركها. وضلينا هيك وكل الناس تتفرج حوالينا وتتطلع على كيف يعني
that this attachment to a geographical place and a person that represents so much, your roots, your identity, your reason of being, because you are connected to a people, it's everything. And there's those kisses, each one for a different member of the family.
Yeah.
How much that visit meant for both of them and for being rooted in each other's love and presence.
I know when I go home to Maryland, which is where I'm from, and I see the landscapes of my youth, I feel reassured in some sense. And so the idea that this woman isn't able to return, not just to the land, but she's not able to return to her family for decades, just heartbreaking. And this was a young woman all alone. What was happening to her? Who stuck up for her? You know, this is a patriarchal society. Who made sure that she was safe? I mean, the untold story there is overwhelming, I think.
Absolutely. And making that portrait of exile is so important. And Lina's project is at the heart of that. And how do you keep your identity and your culture when you're displaced? And how do you keep that collective memory alive? Those questions are at the heart of the documentary. Something that Soualem uses to unearth this memory. She uses a lot of pictures. Mm-hmm. I like how they make a board. And talking about these pictures, Hiam says that these images are my memory's treasures. I don't want them to fade.
Ces images sont le trésor de ma mémoire, que je ne veux pas laisser échapper. Je sais qu'elle risque, elle aussi, de tomber dans l'oubli.
So how do you do that for pictures not to fade? You talk about it, you write about it, you make a film about it. And they use as well archivized stock footage of Palestine. So we have that. We talked about old home videos.
And entries from her journal, and letters.
Letters, yes.
Yeah.
So there's so many mediums. She reenacts as well an experience when she announced to her dad that she was going to marry an Englishman.
Yes. So she, at one point, had been involved in a theater troupe. And so she goes to the theater and she finds the old director of her theater troupe. She takes Lina, she takes a sister, and then they stand on stage and they literally enact it on the stage. I said this, you said that. The director, who is male and is playing her father, he has only a few words and then he just sort of walks away.
Because that's what the dad did, right?
Yeah.
أنا بقى مزبوط يعني بحب شاب هو إنجليزي بس أسلم يعني وبحب كتير إني أبني حياتي أنا وياه وإنه نتجوز وطبعاً بموافقتك يعني أنا كان بقدر أسافر أنا وياه وأتجوز من وراء ظهرك بس أنا بما إني بحبكم كتير وبحترمكم بهمني كتير إنه الإشي يصير بالبيت عندك وبموافقتك.
So to watch it be reenacted in that way, I actually found that, one, really imaginative, but also so simple. And you know, simplicity and brilliance go hand in hand, I think, a lot of times.
I saw a documentary about a camp. So another displaced people, it was young women, and they had gone through traumatic experiences, especially with Taliban and losing members of their families. And they were reacting traumatic experiences in their lives. And so each other, like they were using all the young women to be different actors. And so, of course, like the main character was the person it happened to. And so she was staging everybody and making sure that this is how it happened. And then after, the question was, now let's do it again, but let's do it the way you would have liked it to happen.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And so in the reenactment of these traumatic experiences and changing them, there were healing. Healing was able to start. And I think this documentary is about healing at the heart. Another key sentence, it's when Hiam asked her grandmother, Umali. So Umali, remember, she's the one who left with her husband and lost everything. So she asked about her life. And Umali said, don't open the gates of past sorrows.
À chaque fois que je la questionne sur son histoire, elle me répète « N'ouvre pas les douleurs du passé ».
And I think there is that thread very strong in many of those stories. We're not going to go there. And it's true that the most traumatic experience, we're seeing footage, like real archives footage, to tell the story of 1948 and the exile and the displacement. So many mediums there at work to help a people, a family, a community as well, be in touch with their own stories and their roots and each other, and really connect beyond the trauma. The trauma is still there. The dead are still dead. But together, what are we building?
What is fascinating is that there's this family trajectory, this family story. It's imbricated with the story of Palestine. Hiam says at some point, I was suffocated even by the people I love. Mm-hmm. She has that line.
J'ai tout fait. Tout m'étouffait. Même les gens que j'aimais m'étouffer.
By the end of the film, she's going to be standing in a picture with her 10 brothers and sisters, and they're laughing, they're joking around, and there seems to be this happiness at being reunited. But I thought, you know, for many of us, we have that experience of being in family and feeling like, I love all these people. I can't be who I am here. Like, I have to get out. And then eventually realizing, but there's something that's valuable and something I treasure about being with those people.
And maybe the act of leaving, maybe this leaving helps us realize what we are leaving behind. Iam said, when you fly away, it hurts those you leave and yourself too.
Elle me dit, quand on s'envole, ça fait mal. À ceux qu'on quitte et à soi-même. Il y a toujours déchirement.
There are always heartbreaks. And even though she experienced those heartbreaks, she was able to mend so many of them. And the love that they felt for each other, the closeness.
Yeah.
What a beautiful healing there is in that family.
But also the teasing, right? Like,
oh, yes. I'm the beautiful one. And yes,
this
the
is
sisters.
Oh, you've been divorced twice, maybe 3 times. Like, there's just all this joking about. And in the New Testament, we have the line about, you know, prophet isn't respected in his own land. Well, that's because everybody knows you and knows what you were like when you were 7.5.
Exactly.
So I just got that sense of, one, the family reacting to this sister who had this success and had this life that no one ever probably could have imagined. And then just teasing her and needling her whenever she's around. That's what brothers and sisters do, right?
Yes. And they have each other. And there's a lot of laughter as well in this film. And being together is good. There's a resemblance, not just because they're siblings, but because of their experiences. There's another aspect of the documentary that I really enjoyed is about motherhood and the importance of the mother. And here I'm realizing when, so she had her little girl, and she said, it felt too hard to become a mother in exile in Paris without my mother. So even though she was not forced into exile, she really felt that separation as an exile. And so she came back. When her mother passed, without a mother, she said, the house has become a place without a soul. So recognizing all her mother was for her, she said, my mother always taught me to forgive. Today, I wish I could ask my mother if she forgives me for making a choice that was contrary to her traditions and her life.
Yeah. C'est, ma mère m'a toujours appris le pardon. Elle insistait dans son éducation, de nous enseigner le savoir pardonner. Aujourd'hui, vraiment, j'aurais demandé à ma mère si vraiment elle me pardonnait un choix qui était complètement contre ses traditions et sa vie.
So that feeling of, I want to be close to that woman. I did make mistakes. I did hurt my people. I'm in a good place now, and I love them, and we're at peace with each other. But there are things that I need to ask forgiveness for, and I need my mother, the soul of the home. Yeah. And I cannot raise my child without this society, this structure, the love that these aunts have naturally for this baby, the adoring gaze of my mother and grandmother upon my child. I cannot raise her without it.
لا يا لينا، جبتك عشان حسيت إنه كتير صعب أكون أم بالغربة بباريس من غير أمي.
And it goes beyond the place. And it is the place.
She has a line, we know how to become a mother, but not how to lose a mother.
Oh, for sure, yes.
Je crois qu'on devient mère et on ne sait jamais comment se séparer d'une mère.
And in fact, it came as a surprise to me. I felt like that was another revelation in the film that came a little later, that Hyam's mother had died. And so we're looking at all this footage of the mother, seeing all these images of her, and then suddenly we're told, oh no, she's not alive anymore. That line really struck me because I thought, oh wow, I think we are in the process throughout our lives of losing our mothers. And for some of us that comes really early, for others it comes much later. But do I have hold of my own mother? My mother's still alive. You know, what am I doing to make myself feel closer to her and for her to feel closer to me? To be completely honest, I'm in therapy right now because I feel like at some point my mother's going to need to come live with me. And I want that to be good. So I'm like, there's some things I need to work out, you know, so I can have a healthier relationship with her. I just feel like that line where I thought, oh, who has hold of their mothers?
I was definitely holding on to her and asking so many questions about raising children. That knowledge, that legacy became so important when I started having children. And Mom, how do you do this? And Mom, what do I do now? And so together we were mothers of my children. She really helped me. Of course, she was in France, but we talked every day. Yeah. And then we swapped recipes, and then it was joyful. I just really enjoyed it. And so, no, I miss her dearly, dearly.
I keep thinking of all of these incredible landscape shots of the lake. I've never been to this area of the world, and I didn't expect that lake for whatever reason, but here's this big, beautiful blue body of water surrounded by mountains. And there's even a story Hyam tells about, she thought that they were related to Jesus because they'd heard the stories about how Jesus swam in that lake, and they did too. And she thought of themselves as royalty, you know?
Et que ma famille était sainte. C'est vrai, Lina? Tu pensais ça quand tu étais petite?
Oui.
It's just a wonderful way of, you know, another connection for her to that place again, which I really appreciated. You were talking about what we would call in globalization as deterritorialization and reterritorialization, like this idea of people being taken away from the land and then they have to go to a new place and make a new identity and a new connection to new land. The scenes of weddings that are happening, the scenes of people coming together and celebrating whatever they can celebrate, people coming together and mourning together, that to me was this very concrete image of what that looks like, is to make, even if they're only 30 kilometers away, to make a new home takes so much work, but it's the family that's going to make that possible.
There is as well a question about Lina's own identity, because she's born in France. Her dad is Algerian. Her mom is in this exile of some sort. And Lina asked these questions of her mom. She said, how to be the great-granddaughter of the family once the mother left. And Hyam is like taken by surprise, like, what? And so Lina has to repeat.
Right.
But she's questioning, how can I be between two worlds? There's a rupture here. And I think that's another way that the documentary is helping with this. And we can see a rupture as well with having to leave this beloved village and rebuilding this life. And even though we're still celebrating marriages and birth and we're grieving together, there's that rupture at the heart of it. And I think Lina is embodying that rupture and working towards finding a solution for connecting again with the past and with the present and different places.
Well, and it goes back to something you said earlier about you can't compare your experience to their experience because you got to choose. And that's what these people don't have. They didn't get to choose this. And Hyam is, in fact, trying to take control by choosing. Okay, I'm going to choose. I'm going to escape. And I'm going to go to this other place and I'm going to create a life for myself. And I kept thinking about, even if you do make a new home, there's always this sense that it can all be taken away again.
There's a fear, absolutely.
And so there's Hyam, who hasn't had to live with that necessarily. She's lived with something else. The idea that I had to go away from it all and abstract myself from it in order to find that stability. At the same time, there's immense lack in my life. I don't have the family with me. I don't have that kind of support. So there's that tension, which is better Which is the healthier way? Which is the whole way? How do you become whole in a situation like that?
I don't have the answer for that.
Well, Lina is trying to answer that question, right? Mm-hmm. Someone said that to me recently. When you're feeling overwhelmed by what's going on in politics or things that are outside of your control, what do? Make something.
Go garden.
Garden, quilt, make a piece of art.
Help someone.
And that's where you'll find peace. I'm not a good gardener. That should be said. Thanks to Marie-Laure for introducing Bye Bye Tiberias to me, and I so admire the work that she and her team accomplish with BYU's International Cinema Program. It provided me with a wonderful experience 30 years ago when I was a student, and it's one of the programs at BYU that makes me proud to work here. Our conversation reminded me of an idea from André Bazin from his famous essay Ontology of the Photographic Image. Bazin wrote for Cahiers du Cinéma, the French film journal started in the 1950s that wanted to understand and elevate film as an art practice. In that essay, Bazin writes about what photography can accomplish for us humans. He says, hence the charm of family albums. Those gray or sepia shadows are lives halted at a set moment in their duration, freed from their destiny, for photography embalms time, rescuing it simply from its proper corruption. Cinema is objectivity in time. The image of things is likewise the image of their duration, change mummified, as it were. Our own photos serve this purpose for most of us, and I think of the treasure that family films and photos must have been for Lina, the way they captured her mother's youth and her grandmother's presence. To look back on those films is one thing. To edit them into a cogent narrative of her family is an act of incredible love. So, how about some recommendations? Obviously, if you want to check out Hiam Abbas in fiction film, you could watch 2008's Lemon Tree from Israeli cousins Eran and Ira Riklis. The film is about a Palestinian widow, played by Abbas, whose lemon orchard is under threat by her new neighbor, the Israeli defense minister. It's a simple story, a parable of the tensions between Israelis and Palestinians in the region. We haven't spoken much about documentaries on this show, and I agree with Marie-Laure about how powerful they can be. Dozens of documentaries about war, exile, displacement, trauma exist. I want to just introduce you to one, Alain Resnais's 1955 Night and Fog, which is a fundamental text of world cinema. Just 32 minutes long, Resnais's method is simple: to film the empty Nazi death camps 10 years after the war ended and ask what the Holocaust means about humanity. The effect is stunning. Documentaries about families also abound, but if I can recommend just one, it would be the 2020 Dick Johnson is Dead. Director Kirsten Johnson documents her father's transition from living independently to living with family as he ages, and his desire to hold a funeral for himself while he's still alive. I wept throughout this film. I felt for Mr. Johnson, for his children, for his friends, the recognizable challenges, the joy, the grief, and even the whimsy touched me deeply. You must watch it. That's it for the show today, folks. Voiceover is edited by Aaliyah Alexander and is a production of BYU Radio. I'm your host, Heather Bigley.